Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We're doing another Where to Start by Optima Batteries. And first of all, I want to congratulate Guy B. I randomly selected you, went through the comments. You're going to win that Optima battery from the March Where to Start. So I need you to send me an email through my website. I will mail you a certificate for that Optima battery. And just like that March video, we're going to do it again here in April. Thanks to the great people at Optima. You guys leave a comment. We'll go through there, randomly select somebody 7 days from the time this video is going to air. And man, we'll mail a battery to you, one of them blue tops. Awesome, awesome batteries. Been with that company for a long time. Just a great battery. I don't know what else to say about them. So, with that said, I first got to say, it's blowing, like windy, windy, windy. We went out and filmed Project Ease today on Falcon and did all I could because, man, it's blowing. You guys have to go back and watch those, some pretty cool videos. And it'll really go along with this video on where to start in the month of April. I got 3 lakes. And they're not very easy lakes, but especially one of them, man. I went through all those comments, and man, one of these lakes, it gave me fits. It took me a long time looking at this map, and I just scratched the surface because the lake's so big. I'm gonna save it for last. I'm gonna do Table Rock, Lake Fork, and I'll just tell you, Norris Lake in Tennessee, never been there, don't know anything about it. You guys commented, I had quite a few comments going down through there on Norris Lake, and man, that's a hard lake. That thing's got thousands of miles of shoreline, and it fluctuates like, I think it fluctuates 30 feet if I'm reading that website right. But let's start out with something easy. Let's go to Table Rock. That's just an easy lake to break down for the month of April. And what I love about Table Rock, you got 3 different species there. You got smallmouth, you got spotted bass, and you got largemouth, and they really set up differently. You know, those smallmouth, to me, when I zoom in here on Table Rock, give me a second, we don't have a lot of internet service here, so we're gonna zoom in. Oh, I don't wanna go right there off the bat. Let's start at the dam. Let's start at the dam here. And I don't know, I'm just familiar with it. So here's the dam right here. And those smallmouth and those spotted bass, they really spawn, I'm not gonna say all of them, but they spawn main lake or just right off the main lake. You know, like this bank right here, man, I have caught a bunch of smallmouth on it. And I've got a photo here where the water's a little low. And you can see it's just a big main lake pocket down through here, main lake, you know, point, but it's just got scattered rock out off the bank. You can see right there where, I mean, I got scattered rock pile, scattered rock pile, scattered rock pile. Those smallmouth are gonna spawn on all that. I mean, it's just a pea gravel bank with a little bit bigger chunk rock. That's stuff that I look for in April. I mean, in Table Rock, in the Midwest, you got all these rocks right here. That is where those fish are going to spawn. It is. Those smallmouth are going to be there. You might catch a largemouth. Now, if you slid on back to the back of this pocket, and you got right here on this point, yeah, you're going to catch some smallmouth or largemouth spawning on this point. It's got some brush you can see right there. That's just a good little spot for largemouth to spawn. Same thing with those rocks out off that bank. That's what I look for on Google Earth. You know, is little key features like that. Let's just zoom out. Let's find some other place here. Let's go more largemouth because that's really down the lake. That's more largemouth. So when I zoom in on, let's say this pocket right here, what draws me to this pocket is when you think about the sun. The sun is down here in the southern hemisphere all day long. Comes over on this side. This bank is in the sun all day. There's no shadows on it. It gets the full force of that sun, which is so important in the spring for spawning fish. And then when I take it a little bit step further and I zoom in on this bank, you'll see there's some key little features that those bass will want to use to spawn. You know, they got a brush pile right out here they could stage up on. They got some rocks right up here, some broken rocks on pea gravel. Same thing right here. Got a rock right there. Got some neat stuff back here, but that's going to be soft bottom in the middle. They're going to spawn on each side right there. You go on back in this pocket, you got some more little rock piles, some more scattered stuff, some isolated boat docks. So just some key little features, and that thing's in the sun all day long. So that's another spot that I would go try in the month of April. Now, let's just pick one more. Let's pick like a main lake channel swing. This is the mouth of Indian right here. So you have got this huge bluff, just wow, all the way down through here. Just a great place for fish to winter, summer. But then they don't have to swim very far. When they come around this corner, they go from major bluff. This is a transition. We talk about transition banks all the time. But the rock just goes from big rocks to smaller rocks to pea gravel, and those fish are going to spawn on that. This is going to be a great spot for spotted bass, a great spot for smallmouth. You got some brush piles right out here. You got one right there. You got some rocks. I just know for a fact that's a good bank for those fish to spawn on. They'll come all the way around, and you can see there's some harder bottom right there, a little bit of a point right there. That point right there, they spawn on that point right there. So that's the stuff I look for, those transition banks that's going, you know, you go from that bluff just right around to that pea gravel. That's just a prime example of stuff to look for. So we touched on 3 or 4 different things there. You know, one of the most important is the sun shined on that bank all day long, those transition banks to pea gravel, and really main lake. Now, if the whole caveat to that deal, if the water's up, this changes for the largemouth. You know, those smallmouth are still going to spawn. They're going to come up a little bit tighter. But let's pretend the water's up. Let me see. I thought I found something on here to talk about if the water's up. Oh, that's just another channel swing. You know, this is up to James. You know, they'll be on this bluff, and they will just come right around that bluff, and they'll spawn, you know, on these harder banks. You can see the color change right there. You know, this is clay, that's gravel, that's clay, that's gravel. So they're going to spawn. You can see the really good gravel right there, the really good gravel right there. They're going to spawn on those, and I like the ones that are just a little bit steeper. I marked this one especially because it's just a little bit of a steeper bank. You know, when that water's fluctuating, they're going to like those steeper banks. So if the water's up, the only thing that's going to change there is they're just going to be further back in those pockets, further back in those protected areas, because there's going to be more cover. You know, it's just going to, you just got to find an area that's got it. I don't know if I've got a photo right here that's going to show. Yeah, this right here. This will work. So we can see now in the back of this pocket, we just got some flooded bushes. It's flat, but I got deep water really close. That's the stuff I'm going to look at. Still, it's fairly close to the main lake, not far from where they've spent all winter and where they're going to spend summer. I'm just going to pull back into that little bit flatter areas back where some of that stuff's flooded. So that's Table Rock, guys. That's what I'm going to do in Table Rock. Now baits, and Table Rock is a lot like a lot of lakes. Man, a bait that a Ned rig, guys. You got just a Ned rig. Those smallmouth, those spotted bass, they will eat that Ned rig. A Carolina rig, that's going to be a great bait. I'm going to have a lighter leader. I'm going to have 12-pound test to 10-pound, 12-pound mainline, 10-pound leader. You know, especially on the lower end, I might bump that stuff up a little higher, you know, as I get up into that dirtier water. A stand-up worm is going to work good. A swing head jig is going to work good. Stuff that's going to be on the bottom. Now, as that progresses, as April warms up, throw in some topwaters. Throw in a surge shad, you know, a wake bait, floating worm. Stuff more up in the water column. Think about that, because as those bass have spawned, they push those fry up on the bank on any piece of cover, or they're up in the water column a little bit, especially on those banks. So you need a bait up in that water column. So moving on. Let's go to a different lake. You know, April for Table Rock, that is full-fledged 100%. That whole month there's going to be bass spawning. it is. Now, if we were to go south, and let's go to, man, one of the most popular lakes in the country. Let's go to Lake Fork. We got fish spawning in March in Lake Fork. So things kind of change a little bit. You know, the water's going to be a lot warmer, but there's still going to be fish spawning all the way through April, but my baits change, some of my locations change. So the fish that spawned in March at Fork, they're way up in those creeks, way up in the Glade, way up in, heck, I don't even know the names of them. Just way up in those creeks, like this creek right here. This is a prime example. Some of the very first fish spawned up in this creek, but in April you can still go in there. It's going to be more of a fry protecting type deal. You know, go in there, throw you a frog, throw you a buzz bait, throw a wake bull, swim a jig. Those are going to be the things I'm going to do up there in April, but that doesn't mean I can't still go catch sight fish. You know, like one of my most favorite things to do on Lake Fork in the month of April is, you know, fish some of these main lake pockets and cuts. You know, if you come over here to the golf course, main lake, this is super main lake. When I zoom out, you've got just all this mass of water that takes longer to get to that temperature for fish to spawn. You know, so these fish here are going to be 3-4 weeks behind those fish way up in those creeks because it took that much longer for that water to warm. And some of the biggest bass will spawn on these stuff. I mean, I promise you. So, you know, I'll come to these points and any of this standing timber, you know, I like throwing a drop shot on them or flipping them like with a pit boss. You know, that's what I use. You know, any of these points like that, you know, those fish are going to spawn on those. Carolina rig will work really well too if you want to get back off of them. Use the watercolor to dictate how deep. You know, if the water's dirty, they're going to be shallow, 2-3 foot. If the water's fairly clean, then you can venture on out to 4 to 6 feet of water. I like to focus on the points. I don't necessarily think they're going to be right in the middle of those drains. They're going to be on the points and the sides of those main lake pockets. But to me, that's one of the #1 things that I go to look at when I go to Lake Fork in April. Then when they get done spawning, they're going to pull out on these points. And they're also going to start a shad spawn. So it's also a great spot to look for some of that stuff. But like, you know, little banks like that, that kind of stuff, that to me is really key. You know, if I could go find that stump right there, that stump right there, that stump right there, there's going to be a fish spawning on that thing the whole month of April. It's main lake. It's just a good spot to try. One last thing, you know, I mentioned that shad spawn a little bit. At the end of April, halfway to the end of April, when you get that water temperature 68, 69, 70 degrees in the morning, a shad spawn can happen. It's going to happen quick, fast, furious, first 2 hours in the morning. Places that I look for that are any of that shoreline grass that you got, any grass clumps, docks, riprap, clay points. Those are the places that those shad are going to spawn, so don't forget about that. Baits that I'm going to use, swim jig, spinner bait, vibrating jig, those are the things you want to throw in April. Look for that those first 2 hours. If it's cloudy, it'll last a little longer, but man, it's a great way to catch a lot of fish and some really big fish at the end of April when you're that far south. Any of those lakes that far south, don't forget about that shad spawn. Okay, moving on. All right, guys, you really got me on this one. And I went down through the comments and I had, I don't know, 3 or 4 people mention Norris Lake. I thought, oh, okay, well, I've never been there. I'll go do it. You know, oh my goodness. When I started zooming in on this lake, I don't know how big it is, but it's gargantuan. I mean, it's just thousands of miles of shoreline and miles of water, and it's a snake. And I'm not going to do this justice, guys. I spent, I don't know, 30 minutes looking at this lake, and so I'm going to apologize in advance, but I'm going to try my hardest, and I'm going to just tell you what I see when I look at it. There's a few things I see for the month of May or June that I really like. I really like some of these saddles, some of that current that's going through that lake, but you know, we're talking about the month of April. So I feel like Norris Lake 100%'s got smallmouth in it. I would have to think that's the predominant fish. There has to probably be largemouth in it too. But you know, when I looked at it, there's a couple things that when I zoomed out and really looked at it, there's 2 or 3 things I wanted to find. I wanted to find a major creek that might have a little dirty water. I wanted to find the biggest or most flats that I could find. And then I wanted to find some where stuff kind of came together, like multiple creeks come together, or lots of river bends. So I've got 4 or 5 spots marked on here. I can't wait to hear what you guys think of them. And like I said, I didn't get time to look at this whole lake, because when you look at it, I mean, it goes here. I hold 66 gallons of fuel. I don't think I could look at that whole lake in a day. I know I could. There's just no way. I'm gonna look up how big this thing is when I get done with this video. All right, this first little spot I marked, first of all, what I noticed about this area, and this isn't number 1 or the best one I found, but I got the river and it comes down, makes all these S bends, then I got 2 big flat creeks, and then it gets super narrow again. So these flatter creeks are going to warm up quicker. They're going to be out of that main current. That's what I look for anywhere I go across the country. So when I zoomed in on this spot right here, you know, what drew me to this, I'm going to find a photo here. There it is right there. So the water's a little low right here. What I liked about it was, I mean, it's just, I've got chunk rock, I've got pea gravel, and then I've got a whole bunch of man-made brush piles. When you look at that, just to me, that's going to be a spot fish are going to stage. They're going to spawn right there. This photo's low. You know, if the water's got, I'm going to say these fish on this lake got to spawn deep, because to me, it's got to be a very clear lake. I'm going to say 10 to 20 feet these fish are going to spawn. So when I add water to that photo right there, it's completely underneath the water. So I don't know, it looked interesting to me. It looked like a hard bottom. It's different. I didn't see anything else like that on the map. It's going to have good sun all day. It's going to be back in that pocket. It is a live creek, so it's going to stay fairly clean water, and it's going to be fairly consistent water temperature throughout the year. I just like the creek because it's got lots of flats in it. It's lots of places that those fish can winter and summer and feed. I like spots like you know, like this right here. It just transitions. It's almost like a bluff bank, then it comes around to a pea gravel bank, and I feel like fish are going to spawn right there. You know, right there. You know, right through that stretch. It's just, to me, it's a spot that you can relate back to the Table Rock video that I think fish will spawn, they'll be setting up on. Let's go to that next spot. Let's just see what I marked it. It kind of just intrigued me. Oh, islands. I don't know. When I get to smallmouth lakes, I just feel like there's a lot of fish around these islands. You know, it constricts the current, and you know, I've caught a lot of spawning fish on islands. And when I looked at this island here, it's right off the main lake. It's really close to some deep water. It's got sunshine on it all day long, but yet I'm gonna have wind on it. I'm gonna wanna have some wind on this stuff, because as clear as that water's gonna be, it's gonna help make them a little easier to catch. And it's a little bit harder bottom, and I've got the scattered rocks right out here. When you look at this, you know, when I looked at all these points in this area, this point stood out to me because it's got these rocks, you know, just stuff for a fish to spawn next to. So that's the reason I chose that point. It was a little bit different than anything else. It's a little flat with deep water really close by. You know, for me, you know, this is going to be some of those same baits that I'm going to throw at Table Rock. It's going to be like a Ned rig, a split shot rig, a shaky head. I'm going to swim a grub, you know, swim a small power swimmer. You know, those smallmouth love that kind of stuff. So, you know, that point to me would be one that I think I could go catch some fish on. I tried to find what I thought would be maybe a largemouth spot. I don't think this is it yet. I got a lot of stuff marked on here. I looked at this lake pretty hard. I don't know, I just like this point. You can come in right off the main lake. It's a big secondary splitter point, and it's got a rock patch right out off the end of it. So if the water's up and I got 10 to 15, 20 feet of water over that rock, you know, they're going to stage there. I could throw a jerkbait on them before they go to spawn, and then I think they'll probably turn around and spawn really close to that. So I thought it was a unique point when I went to zoom in on it. I don't know, I just kind of liked it. All right, moving on up. On these kind of lakes with that much clear water, I like big marinas and lots of docks. I feel like it's another fish holding piece of structure. And so man, this point right here just looks phenomenal to me. One, we could draw all these fish off these docks. It's a little flatter point. It's a different color, so I feel like it's a harder clay, point. It's got a stump, got something out there on it. To me, was a neat point for those fish to spawn on. You can just see how it's a different color than everything else, and it's a drawing power of that marina. It's one added thing to that pocket to house that many more fish, which thus is going to increase my chances, if I was on this lake for the first time. All right, let's look just for a chance to see if largemouth. I went up the river a long ways and I found a big major feeder creek coming in that river. I didn't look to see if it was a live creek. Oh yeah, it's a live creek. So what that tells me is it's going to get dirty and rainy, but it's also going to clear up really, really fast. But when I looked at this creek, it was way up the river. It would be a spot I would check, no doubt. I've got those docks that I talked about, another fish holding characteristic, and I've just got a really steep side on the right and some really cool flat points on the left. You can see this one's a little bit different color. I got some stumps or brush balls right out here off of it. One, they could be there on a jerkbait early in April. Two, they could possibly spawn on that point, later in April. If you guys' water got warm enough. I marked one more spot right here. Again, just another nice flat point right off of the channel swings. Got a couple little bit of isolated stuff on it, just is different than anything else. And that's gonna hold a fish. That's all it takes, to go catch 2, 3, 4, 5 spawning fish off that point. Midway back in the pocket, all that's got sun on it all day long. Man, there it is. That's a doozy. That's a monster lake. That's a hard lake to break down in 30 minutes. If I was to go fish there and have a tournament, it'd take me weeks, hours upon hours upon hours to really search that lake, to dive off, to figure out those water levels, to figure out, I have to think April the water's getting warm enough for fish to spawn. I could be way wrong. That could be a really high elevation lake, and it may be May. So, if I'm wrong, use some of this stuff maybe in May, if that's when the spawn happens there, because I really don't know. I've never been there, haven't done any research on that. So leave a comment. Be sure you like, be sure you subscribe, and I'm going to go through those comments, man. Thanks to Optimum Batteries. One of you guys is going to win another battery this month. I appreciate you guys following along, and we'll see you next week.